Hello and welcome to Ukraine Today's Press Review. I'm Rahim Tula. In today's programme, we'll look at reaction in the media to the protests in Armenia, which have seen as many as 10,000 people come out onto the streets as a result of an announcement of a steep rise in electricity prices. We look first at Foreign Policy magazine, which argues that the 17 to 22% hike in electricity prices, which is set to take effect on August 1st, has galvanized protesters who view them as a symptom of an increasingly corrupt and out-of-touch government. The magazine says that Armenia has distinguished itself from other nations that were once part of the Soviet Union because the current protest movement, which has been growing over several days, is the most widespread public demonstrations in Yerevan since thousands of activists rallied against President Serge Sargsyan's re-election in 2013. Unlike many of its former Soviet neighbors, Armenia has an active civil society and community of activists that aren't afraid to take to the streets. Meanwhile, for Bloomberg, Leonid Bashidskiy believes that the Kremlin fears that there could be a revolution in Armenia like the one in Ukraine last year, which toppled the country's pro-Russian president. But outside of East Europe, he doesn't think the demonstrations will get much attention, because the world doesn't get excited about protests over an increase in electricity prices in a country of 3 million. The demonstrations in Armenia are watched closely in Moscow and Kiev, however, because they reflect unusually intense dissatisfaction with Russian power in a post-Soviet nation that had seemed to be securely in the Kremlin's grip. Bashidskiy goes on to draw a more explicit parallel with Ukraine's Euromaidan mass protest movement last year. What's bothering the Kremlin? Well, Moscow's worry is that the uprising in Ukraine started in the same way, with quiet grumbling, small rallies and a sing-along. Then police used excessive force and the protests escalated so that in less than 2 months, downtown Kiev was burning and soon President Viktor Yanukovych fled to Russia. So, whilst Bashidskiy there suggesting a Maidan in Armenia might be on the cards, The Guardian has recruited some expert opinion which argues the opposite. Alexei Malyshenko, a Caucasus and Central Asia expert at the Carnegie Center in Moscow, points out Armenian President Sargsyan only just signed documents with Putin that Russia will sell Armenia cheap gas, and everyone was happy. Then they raise electricity prices, no one likes this, and they hold up EU flags. Will there be a Maidan in Armenia? I doubt it, but the fact they harshly disperse protesters has grown the demonstrations. So, mass protests in Armenia bringing back memories of the Euromaidan demonstrations in Ukraine last year, which toppled pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych and put Ukraine on its current path of conflict and reform. Is Armenia heading for a similar fate? The critics seem divided, but overall, we have to say at this point that it seems unlikely that a full-blown change of government is going to take place in Yerevan. That's all we have time for today. Do join us again tomorrow for another press review. In Kiev, this is Ukraine Today.